Another thing you and I talked about, and I think we should talk about now, is how does process help in helping teams really put together a better account strategy up front and
Right.
drive towards the right decisions and behaviors and communication to the client in the end.
I think, Kevin, I think process can help immensely here. And I'm not saying process for process sake, right? But this is back to, what I said earlier about account planning. Most companies are really bad at it. And they might even have an account planning process in place, but it gets so heavy and laborious, nobody wants to do it, right? So I think it's better if you keep it kind of lightweight, right? But it still has to be followed. There has to be some level of rigor to it, right? So when I think about growth on existing, and I'm going to interchange growth on existing and account planning because I think they are kind of one and the same.
Yep.
First off, you got to do, as far as the process is concerned, you have to do your upfront homework and research. Now, that is also researching your client. And I think one of the best sources is go to their annual report or their ESG reports and read the chairman's and the CEO's letter to the shareholders or the chief sustainability officer's letter to the shareholders. More often than not, they're laying out what the company's focused on. I've got an old colleague who likes to talk about the fact that in an annual report, let's not talk about the audited financial reports. Of course, those are looked at with a fine-tooth comb. But annual reports can be rather large. And this individual always says, the most parsed words in an annual report are those chairman's and CEO's letters to the shareholders. And you could argue the chief sustainability officer in an ESG report these days too, because that's where those individuals are making commitments and promises to the street and to the investor community about what the company's going to focus on and where they headed. And so starting your research there is never a bad thing, because you can now take that research and just boil it down to the 4 or 5 key business objectives and the 4 or 5 key IT priorities and technology priorities that come out of that. And you can engage a client with, hey, this seems to be what your company's focused on. Would you agree or disagree? And if you disagree, tell me what's different or what's changed, right? Or how are you and your organization contributing to this? Those executives are going to go for 10, 15, 20 minutes telling you all about that, because you're given an opportunity to talk about how they're making an impact on that business. But that's how you start, right? The other part of that, and you need that research. From there, if you're getting into account planning, you need to understand what's your share of wallet, what's your competitor's share of wallet, what's your current status in the account? Are you green, yellow, or red from a delivery standpoint? Who do you know in the organization, right? The relationship map. Because if you're trying to get to an adjacency, they may be helpful in getting you an introduction, or at least where you've got work to do, right? And then understanding what's already in flight, because we might be able to refine something that's already in flight. And then the account planning, if you get everybody on the same page with that content, right? Now you can start to have a productive brainstorming session on where could we go next. And that leads me to a brainstorming session implies there's more than one person, right? At least I hope so. And so I like to pull cross-functional teams in here: sales, pursuit, delivery, any kind of solutions consultants, anybody who's been affiliated with the account and has information, because it's crucial, right, to take all those perspectives, right? Because everybody's working with the account maybe in a slightly different fashion. And for you to get a better picture of the client, you need to have everybody involved. And so if you pull that homework and research together that I talked about earlier, that I call it an account snapshot, now you take the account planning workshop is really about taking everybody through that for the first half. These are typically an hour to an hour and a half long workshops when you get these kicked off. So let's say 30 to 45 minutes where you get everybody through that snapshot. And then if everybody's on the same common footing of understanding, now you can take the back half and start to brainstorm ideas. The other thing I like to do is maybe get 2 accounts in the same industry group and buddy them up so that you do the 2 account planning workshops back to back, either day 1, day 2, or even back to back in a given day. And you let account 1 go first and account 2, cross-pollinates with ideas. And then you flip the tables, right? Because the more you get people working together and sharing ideas, right, the better the end result can be. And then you take that, and now you can start to put that in front of your client. If you've got any kind of a governance cadence where you're doing quarterly or periodic business reviews, those are some of the least salesy and best places to float new ideas in front of the client. But if you've done your research up front about what the client cares about and tie that back to the priorities, the business priorities, and then show them, or maybe the priorities of the program you already have in place, but show them, hey, this is what the company's focused on. We think we can help you in these other areas. Those periodic business reviews are great places to put those ideas forward, right?
Well, I love the idea for a couple of reasons. One is, let's be honest, within an industry, the clients within the industry, people move between those different companies. So one, you might be able to connect a guy who was at this account A is now at account B. You guys need to go talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Or by having the two accounts going back to back, like you said, now we can start identifying, okay, what are some of the common landscape drivers we're seeing here within the industry? And then that can lead to new industry solutions or approaches, or maybe not a center of excellence, but maybe a new solution, right?
Yeah.
And so those are things that can help both accounts be more successful, not just the accounts, the clients of those accounts be more successful, right? So there's all sorts of great knock-on effects that can happen here.
Absolutely. And this is where, we talked about shaping the deal, doing an account planning or growth on existing type of program, right? This is how you get on the front foot, because then when you share the idea that you might have come up with, and you might decide to just go share it with your executive coach or sponsor at the client, and that's fine too. And maybe you start there as you're getting ready for the next QBR or strategic business review, right? And then you can put it in front of a broader audience. But then when you do it, and you do it in the context of what you understand about what the client cares most about, that's where I'm saying it's a non-threatening, non-salesy way to pre-qualify the opportunity. And if they show legitimate interest, then the sales guy can go running with it, right?
But yeah, that's how we start transitioning from sales over to customer success.
Right. And I might have said delivery, but think of customer success in there too, right? Sales pursuit, delivery, customer success, whatever you call the terms, right? All the people who are engaging on a regular basis with your client need to be part of that planning process that I described.
Well, and part of it too is documenting what are the selection criteria likely to be. What are the unstated selection criteria?
I'm sorry to talk over you. Better yet, what should they be? Now you're starting to influence what that deal that RFP might look like.
Yep. And who are the decision makers? Who are the key influencer? Who are the roadblocks going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And being able to identify all that. Do any of them have a wedded relationship with your competitor?
Yeah.
Right? Is that important to know? You bet it is.
Yeah.
Right. You got to know that. And how are you going to get around that? Or how are you going to overcome that?
Yeah.
I think that's all interesting. And then by being able to do that research and being able to document all that, then it's about aligning the right resources.
The one thing I'd also add, somebody might sit there and say, well, account planning, and I got to pull all that information together. I would argue that every account that's material to your business, you'd want to have that together as an executive briefing. And I'm talking to content. If you put it in PowerPoint speak, it's probably 8 to 10 or 12 slides max, right? And it's not a bunch of just words on a page, right? It can be graphics, it can be what have you. But I would argue that having that material together and then refreshing it once a year, because that's what we're talking about, not, and you can refine it over the year, but then go back and kind of snap the chalk line and do it again once a year. Having that material at the ready, that's your executive briefing book if one of your top execs wants to come in and meet with the client, or you want to bring them in, because this gives them a great picture of where you are today. What's the client think of you? Who do we know at the client? And more importantly, where are we trying to go next, right? And so, I'm a big believer in having materials be reused for multiple purposes. And this is, this information, and it's served very well in the past in just the way I described it, right? Having that together makes it a lot easier for your top executives to engage quickly and come up to speed quickly, because you're already prepared.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And even if it's only 80% because it hasn't been updated, in the last 6 months, that's still a lot better than going in cold and or scrambling to try to pull together and find information through email and the CRM and everything else and try to pull together a cohesive picture.
Exactly.
Yep.